What's going on, operators, and welcome back to another video. Happy New Year. Well, sort of. We're not even out of the first month of the year and the government's already throwing down OICs. Now there's been two of them, if you haven't heard. The first one is not one that we're going to talk about, or I should say the latest one, because that one is a little bit more regulatory and outside of the scope of this video. We are going to be talking about the first one of the year, which banned another 324 rifles. A lot of these were cope guns, guns that we were using in place of the ones that they already banned in 2020. And this included sporting rifles, hunting rifles, as well as 22 caliber plinkers. The GSG-16. I mean, come on. How desperate do you need to be for votes? In any case, we're going to be talking about a lot of the questions that I've been getting lately, both here on the channel and on our Discord, linked below by the way, about what to do with your newly prohibited firearms. When is the amnesty period ending? Where do I store my prohibited firearms? Where can I take them, if anywhere? Can I shoot them? Can my friends borrow them? And there's been so many other questions. So if you have your own, make sure to leave those below, or like I said, come on by our Discord after the video for a further discussion. Before that, this video is brought to you by us and the brand new Foxtrot Juliet Tango t-shirt, which we make right here in the studio. Yeah, you thought I was going to say something else, didn't you? They're available in 5 different sizes and 2 different colors. We have this bright, beautiful, and vivid vinyl design that we press also in-house. If you'd like to help support our channel and help protect us against YouTube's predatory censorship policies with respect to firearms, then head over to CanadianOperator.ca and get your shirt now. Link is down below. All right, so new year, new firearm prohibitions. What do you need to know and what do you need to do? Thankfully, there's not much, but it is important to understand specific things so that you don't find yourself out of compliance, as the government likes to say, with the law. The first, of course, being understanding what prohibited firearm means. Now, outside of course, the specific definition that exists inside the Firearms Act, I want to just talk about what it actually means to you and me, just in layman's terms. Essentially, what prohibited means is that you can't buy or sell it, you can't trade or transfer it, and even on your deathbed to your loving children, you can't hand it down. The expectation is that when you die, you give your prohibited firearms to the government, who will be happy to pay you nothing for them, and basically that's it. Yeah, kind of sucks. So hopefully that is something that we can change. But there are 2 systems that are meant to protect you, and you're probably going to be covered by either one or the other, and in some rare cases, maybe both. I want to talk about the older one as well here because it does have a lot of similarities with the new one, and that of course meaning the prohibited firearms license and the amnesty period that was enacted in 2020 when the government banned thousands of sporting and hunting rifles and shotguns. So back in the day, if you had a firearm that was restricted, non-restricted, you basically would be able to apply for a prohibited firearms license if one of those firearms was suddenly made prohibited. You would apply for it, not unlike any other way that you would apply for a PAL. You would get that. You would take your prohibited firearm and store it in a manner prescribed by law. I'll link to a document from the RCMP website so you can have a little bit more detail on that. Now, the new system is a little different. It's a little bit less permanent than the new system because it's just a period that at the government's discretion they can decide how long it's going to last and how much it's going to cover you. But in any case, they introduced that as part of the 2020 OIC because at that time, there was a number of people, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of firearms owners that were in possession of either a non-restricted or a restricted firearm that became prohibited overnight. In order to protect them from legal liability, this amnesty period was introduced, and it was extended several times now, which basically tells us that this whole buyback program that the government's got going on, which I would very much call a confiscation program, is not working very well. So that is essentially what you need to know with respect to the new prohibitions. Another thing to know is that these are OICs, or orders in council. Now, I've talked about how these work in previous videos, so again, we'll keep this kind of short. But essentially, this is not a full legislative process. It doesn't necessarily go through the House and go to deliberation in front of committees. It doesn't go to the Senate. It doesn't get royal assent. This is something that the cabinet drafts up, which is essentially that the current government in power, and then the Governor General signs off on it afterwards, and that's it. It's kind of like an executive order in the US. So it's something that's very easy to create, but it's also very easy to repeal. In any case, those are some of the things that you need to know. Let's now talk about the dynamics of how this might affect you in the future. Okay, so now you know a little bit more about what prohibited means and the different systems in place to help protect you from criminal liability. let's talk a little bit about some of the short-term and the long-term effects of these bans, whether they're OICs or legislation like Bill C-21 and the handgun ban and the evergreen clause and all that garbage, right? So, of course, the short term is you're not going to be able to use your firearms. That's the unfortunate thing. Now, I say short term because there is an election coming up. We are in an election year, and the best case scenario is going to be that after the government is prorogued and there is a speech from the throne, which Jagmeet Singh said he would vote against, which is essentially a no confidence vote, but just a really fancy one, that could spark a spring election. And if that happens, then there's a lot of things that we don't really have to worry too much about in the future, like, for example, the amnesty period, which we're not going to need anymore because the Conservatives have told us that they were going to repeal things like Bill C-21 and all the OICs and all this other stuff. There is some negative stuff in here, though. For the long term, unfortunately, Bill C-21 is going to be around for a long time. And I want to set your expectations accordingly here because Bill C-21 is legislation. And so in order for it to be unlegislated, right, it has to go through that same process. So I just want to set your expectations accordingly here that Bill C-21 is probably going to take years. And I mean, like, at a minimum of probably 2 years, potentially longer. However, the OICs banning the recent 324 firearms and the OIC banning thousands of guns from 2020 would theoretically be done overnight, and just as fast as you were an unwilling criminal, you were, again, a law-abiding gun owner. Okay, so last but not least, let's talk a little bit about storage because you're going to want to know how and where to store your newly prohibited firearms. Now, this is not really going to affect the camp of the guys with like the converted autos and the super old prohibs that have been around for a long time. First of all, they probably don't need a guy like me telling them how to store them because they already know that those prohibs have a completely different way of storing them, where you have to take the bolt out of the gun, store the gun separately, store the bolt separately. Again, we'll link to the document down below so you can see what that is. But this is not that. So if you've had a restricted or non-restricted firearm that was banned by the 2020 or the 2025 OIC, essentially you can just store it in the same manner that you would have stored it in the way that it was classified before the bans, right? So as an example, I have a Tavor X95, which is an 18.5-inch barrel, more than 26.5 inches of overall length, classified as a non-restricted firearm. It was recently banned in the 2025 OIC, making it prohibited, but according to RCMP, I can store that in the same way that it was how it was classified before the ban. So before the ban, it was a non-restricted. Therefore, I can store it as a non-restricted. That's going to do it, everybody. Thank you so much for sticking around all the way until the end of the video. I hope you found that one helpful and enjoyable. If you did, you can help us out in a big way by just remembering to become a subscriber, like the video, share it with your friends, and of course, keep notifications on. We've got some awesome optic reviews and rifle reviews, including the Sterling Arms R9 Mark I coming up very, very soon. That'll be very happy and excited to bring to you. And of course, a lot of other goodies coming this year. That being said, thank you so much for those who are supporting us directly through the VIP program. You can find out more information about that in the description down below, as well as CanadianOperator.ca, the sponsor of today's video, where you can get yourself a Foxtrot Juliet Tango shirt or some stickers. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Until then, happy shooting.